So 2025 is now over, and yet the horrors persist. And by horrors, I of course mean the stack of books still on the floor of my library after 2 years of Shelve It or Scrap It, the vlog project where I try and get these stacks of books onto my shelves or scrapped into my unhaul pile. The good news is that I've actually made progress this year, and so we only have 42 books left in the stacks, which is 29 books less than at the start of 2025. But I've now decided that this stack is our final boss of Shelve It or Scrap It, and to beat it by the end of the year, each month I'm going to divide the amount of books in stacks by the amount of months left of the year to determine how many books I'm going to have to remove from the stacks per episode, so that hopefully by the end of 2026, every book in the stacks will either find a home on my shelves or be headed into my scrap pile. In episode 22, I shelved one book and I scrapped two, and we are going to be starting episode 23 with 42 books in the stacks. Hello my guys, welcome to episode 23 of Shelve It or Scrap It, the vlog project on my channel where I try and get these stacks of books behind me off the floor and onto my shelves through any means possible, usually through a process of reading them and deciding whether I'm going to be shelving them or whether I'm going to be scrapping them. If this is your first time here, I will put the full Shelve It or Scrap It playlist down in my description box so that you can catch up at your leisure. But for those of you who know what's going on, welcome to the new era, baby. We are entering into our first episode with a new set of rules, and I asked you guys for suggestions in episode 22 of how we should figure out how many books per episode I should be reading, because we're now going to be moving away from the format of reading or attempting to read the same amount of books that I'd hauled in the month previous. That was not working out for us. It was a lot. So thank you so much for your guys' suggestions. I think the one that I'm going to be going with, that a couple of you guys suggested, is to essentially divide the amount of books in the stacks by the amount of months left in the year. Now, at this point, at the time that I'm filming it, we have 11 months left of the year, but by the time you're seeing it, we will be at a point where we have 10 months left in the year. So we're starting episode 23 with actually one less book in the stacks that we ended episode 22 on. I hold quite a few books in February, and I have reshuffled some of my shelves trying to get those onto the shelves. And in doing so, I've actually created some gaps. Not where I want them to be though, which is the problem. I have gaps on my TBR cart now, but no gaps on the hardback shelves, which, I mean, as you can see, that is the place where we've always had an issue. But I did manage to get a couple of books from the stacks onto shelves, meaning that we're going to be starting with one book less. Now, if we divide this number 42 by the amount of months that we have left, I'm just going to say we're going to be reading roughly 4 books per episode. Now, I'm going to recalculate this at the beginning of every episode, but I do think that that should be about the right number that remains consistent throughout the rest of the year. And because the goal is to reduce the stacks, I don't actually have to read 4 books, I just have to remove 4 books from the stacks. So for example, if I decided to unhaul something on a shelf that created a gap where I could fit an extra book from the stacks that I haven't read, that would count towards our total of 4. However, our original rule still remains that if I am trying to shelve the last book of the episode and I can't get it on the shelves without taking something unread off, then I also have to read and resolve that book. So we should probably be reading, I want to say 3 to 5 books per episode, but we will see how it goes. And in terms of the theme of today's episode, this has been one I've been sitting on for a while, but I had tons of ideas buzzing around in my head. So I actually put a poll up on Patreon with all of the things that I've been thinking about, and they decided that I should be tackling duplicate copies of books. So books where I own more than one copy, more than one edition, and it's a book that I haven't read. In my reshuffling and reorganization of the shelves, I actually pulled at least one edition of all of those books. Some of them were already in the stacks, but in the case that they weren't, I've pulled that extra edition and put it into the stack so that it is ready for today's episode. We have 6 books in total, and I'll be honest, these are not books that I intentionally have 2 copies of, and they are books, for the most part, actually, I think I am expecting to enjoy all of them, but I don't think I'm expecting to enjoy any of them enough to want to keep more than one edition. And there are going to be exceptions there, because I do have a couple of arcs in the stacks behind me. So we'll start, because we only have 6 options here, I'll start by telling you guys what they are. A couple of them, because they've only just ended up in here, are on top. We have Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. This is very unfortunately an arc that was sent to me by the publisher a couple of years ago when this book was released, and I never got around to it. And that was, of course, a Fairy Loot book in the adult subscription. So I have a Fairy Loot edition of books 1 and 2 of these, but I've kept hold of the arc just in case I love this book so much that I also wanted to keep hold of the arc. In terms of the arcs, actually, I also have Operation Bounce House by Matt Dinman. This is a book that is on my February TBR. And while I technically do not have an edition of this on my shelves right now, I do have an edition of this in this box from the Broken Binding, because it is the Broken Binding fantasy and sci-fi sub-book for the month of January, I think. So reading Operation Bounce House will help me decide whether this is one that I want to keep. I do plan on making a whole video on the Broken Binding subscription at some point, but you're going to be waiting a while for that. So we're getting a head start on that if we select this book. I also have a duplicate edition of a book that I do not own another copy of yet, but I think I'm going to, which is the only hint that I'm going to give you, and that is Starside by Alex Astor. This is a romantasy that is released in March. This one is going to be going on my March TBR, so I could get a little bit ahead with this one. Further down in the stack, we'll just pull them out, it's fine. Hi. Hello. Yeah, I know Mummy's working. Get off that. I then have 2 finished copies that were sent to me by the publisher ahead of their release that were then later featured in Fairy Loot boxes, and they are We Who Will Die by Stacia Stark. This one is a Roman Empire inspired romantasy with a love triangle. That one was from Penguin Michael Joseph, and then from Bloomsbury, when I became an ambassador for their new fantasy imprint, Bloomsbury Archer, they sent me a welcome package with Dawn of the Firebird by Sarah McGall Rana, which features a character who is infiltrating an elite academy to kind of break it apart from the inside, which is one of my favorite plot structures. And then the only book that I have a duplicate of, because I actually purchased it myself, is In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. This was back when Waterstones were just starting out doing really nice printed edges, and this was one of their standouts. So I pre-ordered this because I've enjoyed TJ Klune in the past, and lo and behold, it once again featured in the adult Fairy Loot subscription, so I've ended up with 2 copies of this. I actually don't know which of the editions of this one I prefer, because I think that they're both really nice. So if I do get to this one, we are then going to have to decide, if I choose to keep it, which one stays on my shelf, and potentially which one is on hold. I guess we'll keep these towards the top of the stacks, as they are going to be our eligible books for episode 23. As you guys know, one of my favorite things about Shelve It or Scrap It is the spontaneity, not knowing what book I'm going to be picking up next. But as I mentioned, one of these books is on my February TBR, and that one is Operation Bounce House by Matt Dinman. So I think I'm actually going to be starting off with this one, and then because I do love that element of spontaneity, I'll then add the rest of them to a spinner wheel to decide what we're going to be reading next. But I am a little behind on my TBR, and Shelve It or Scrap It, you know, that's the main reason why I keep falling behind. So we're going to rectify that by actually picking a book off my TBR. So this one is, I don't know if it is a standalone. I think it is a standalone sci-fi story from the author of the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, which I'm currently 4 books into. And this one is following a guy who runs a farm of agriculture robots, and there's an extinction program being run on his planet. It's under the guise of like an eviction notice, but essentially this big corporation has decided that this planet is to be no more, and they are charging bored earthers an exorbitant fee for the opportunity to design war machines that are going to kill the inhabitants of this planet. So our main character has to team up with other people from his planet to fight back against this force. Now, this one has just been released like a couple of weeks ago, so the audiobook is available now, and the audiobooks for Dungeon Crawler Carl are phenomenal. So I am tempted to give this one a go in audio. The narrator is different though. It is still narrated by Jeff Hayes, but I think the dominant narrator on this one is actually Travis Baldry, which a lot of you guys probably already knew that Travis Baldry was a narrator. I only know Travis Baldry from like Legends and Lattes, so that was really cool to find out. And I do think I am going to go the audio route with this, maybe reading along at the same time, because I feel like if this is anything like Dungeon Crawler Carl, then that audio narration is really going to help to bring this story to life. So So I have started Operation Bounce House. It is very early days though. I'm at the beginning of chapter 5. So far, it's given Illuminate, which makes sense now. Like looking back on the synopsis, I'm like, I 100% can see the correlation here. But it did take me by surprise. It's generally like the plot of Illuminate and the plot of Operation Bounce House is that there are people who live on a planet and this big corporation decides that they want that planet and everyone has to die. So the execution of that is a little different between the two series, but that is like the core point. And we also have extra, I guess not quite multimedia, but they're files that give us like a tableau of life on that planet before this whole thing kicked off, like just small moments amongst people, which I've not really had enough of those yet to give you guys like to narrow down the theme of all of those files, but they do like intersperse some of the chapters, and that little almost mixed media element is also reminding me of Illuminate. But the reason why I am here today is because I have decided that I am going to be going along the audio route for this one. I started the audiobook this morning. I'm having a content filming day. And so while I've been pottering about like getting ready, setting up between videos, I've been listening to the audio. I'm very particular about audio. We know this, but if the audiobook is good and provides an extra experience that you can't get from reading physically, then I'll go the audio route. And honestly, I'm used to experiencing Matt Dinman's writing through audio at this point. So I went into this not really knowing anything about Travis Baldry's narration style, but it's working for me so far, and I feel like it does really help to enhance the story in a similar way that the audio does for Dungeon Crawler Carl. So because I'm going the audio route with this one, I need to pick a physical read because I like to listen to audio at appropriate times when I'm just like naturally going about my business and it would be good to have an audiobook on. I don't like to force myself to consume hours and hours and hours of audio for the sake of finishing a book. So I had a few things on my currently reading that I've now cleared off, which means that I can pick a physical read. And I have loaded up my wheel with all of the duplicate books in the stacks. I think, yeah, there's 5 on there. I'm a little bit nervous because I am excited about all of them, but right now I feel more drawn towards the newer stuff on my TBR because it's like new, shiny and exciting. And obviously I pre-ordered a copy of it in the Lives of Puppets, so I do want to read that. And I actually sampled Swordcatcher for the episode of Shelve It or Scrap It, where I read the first 50 pages of a bunch of books and decided based on that what I was going to unhaul and what I was going to keep. And I've enjoyed Cassandra Clare in the past, so I'm also enthusiastic about that. But I feel like if I were left to pick, I'd be going for something newer, which is why we're using the spinner wheel. I also like the spontaneity, but let's see what we're going to read. Can't see where the pointer is. We Who Will Die. Okay, that is a newer one on the TBR. I'll go get it. So I have been pronouncing this author's name as Stacia Stark. I do think that it might actually be Stacia though. And this is going to be my introductory point with this author. They are very well known for a different series that has intrigued me in the past because you know if there's a buzzy romantasy author, I want to hear about it. Unfortunately, at the beginning of this copy, it gives me no information. Let me grab the old Google. Oh, it's I don't know if this is book 1, but Caught This Cruel and Lovely, A Queen This Fierce and Deadly. It's that series that I have seen around a lot. So Stacia Stark has been one on my list of authors to try, and Penguin Michael Joseph were kind enough to send me this copy right at the end of 2025 to give this one a go. So thank you very much to Penguin Michael Joseph. And this one has some things that I really like and some things that I don't enjoy as much. So this is inspired by the Roman Empire. Love that. One of my favorite things. It also has a love triangle. Love that. I love the angst and the drama, especially if we have like a 50-50 pull of which way we're going to go. My issue is though, similarly to when we talk about why choose romances, I tend to have a preference that I pick really early on, and then I get annoyed when the other character has page time. But I'm hoping that this is one where it's kind of people are conflicted about which one they want to choose. I don't feel like we've had a solid love triangle like that where people are divided for a very long time. Normally there's one very obvious choice and the other one kind of sucks. So I'm excited to see how it plays out in this one. The thing I'm a little bit unsure about though is that I'm pretty sure this contains vampires, and vampires for me, like, I'm still not over the oversaturation of vampires from the 2000s, and so seeing them cycle back around has not particularly excited me. I do think though, when they are in a high fantasy or an epic fantasy setting as opposed to a paranormal, I do tend to enjoy them more. Think of things like Empire of the Vampire. I just don't love a paranormal romance angle, which I think this one is more along the fantastical edge. And I think it also has some sort of like competition or something. Yeah, she's trying to kill the Emperor, but to get close to him, she has to enter the Sundering, an arena where only the strongest, fastest, and deadliest survive long enough to be selected for the Emperor's elite guard. So it also kind of has that same trope that's in Dawn of the Firebird that I love, which is infiltrating a system to break it apart from the inside. So sounds good. Lots and lots of good things in here. Let's see whether I actually enjoy it. I have not had a romantasy win for 2026 yet, because if you remember last episode, all of the things that I had high hopes for were a bit of a flop. I had a really productive day yesterday. I don't know how you guys feel, but I feel like it's almost impossible to have 2 super productive days in a row. Yesterday, I edited 3 long form videos and 2 short form, and today I'm struggling to even go sit at my desk. So swings and roundabouts, I guess, but I am going to be getting on with some work in a minute. My bathroom, I think, is now done. I still have a couple of bits to do. I need to caulk some of the gaps, or caulk them, as we say in this house, and touch up the paintwork a little bit, but I think all of the work that they have to do is done. They've fixed the hole in my ceiling, which is great, and I can hopefully feel a little calmer now. I've been struggling to read over the last 6 weeks, because that's how long they've been doing it, because I feel like when I am not feeling very well, I internalize a lot, and I just want to be left alone to kind of like process and be calm. Like, I want to be in an environment that's calm and that I know as much as I possibly can regulate these things, that nothing's going to kind of like spike my anxiety. And having people in and out of my house and not knowing what days they're arriving and not knowing if I need to look presentable has really kept me in a fight or flight kind of space when my anxiety's been high. So I'm really happy now to have some time alone in my house, and I can put my hallway furniture back, which means I can actually access my paperback shelves, and I can put my romance shelves back, which means I can access those as well. But I might do that today in between editing some videos. I'm just trying to edit as much as possible right now to prepare as much as possible as I can for going on holiday at the end of next month, or this month when you're watching this. But anyway, this is not a regular weekly vlog. If you want life updates like that, then definitely check out my regular vlogs, because they contain more of them. This is more of a solid reading vlog, so I'm going to talk to you about some of my reading, because as well as getting all of that editing done yesterday, I also read over 100 pages of We Who Will Die. I've read a little bit this morning as well, and I'm on page 128. This was slow going to start off with, and I feel like that is because of the font in here. It's really small. I have read recently, I've read epic fantasy with more accessible font than the romantasy that I've been reading. It's so small, and also it's so unusual in something like romantasy to have like chapter titles that are tiny. So this is like 400, and it's nothing like the Book of Asriel, that was seriously intense, but it is like 410 pages of quite small font. Also was procrastinating a little bit. You know, sometimes I love starting a new book, and sometimes I just wish I was already in the middle of it and I didn't have to do the work of like getting my head wrapped around it. But I have sunk into this one now, and I am enjoying it. So we're following a girl who's called Arvel, and she lives in this district that's quite close to the capital city. In a lot of ways, this actually reminds me quite a bit of Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. Not in the way that Powerless by Lauren Roberts does though, that is for sure. And she participated in this mandatory arena fight called the Sands when she was a few years younger. I think it's like 5 or 6 years before this story starts. And the winners of the Sands go through to compete to be part of the Emperor's elite guard. Now, this has become mandatory because the Emperor only wants the best of the best, and you can't find the best of the best unless you put people's backs up against the wall. So that is what he has been doing in the Sands. But in this fight, this final fight to win the Sands, which she did, her best friend died. She also injured herself, and because of the death of her best friend, that kind of overshadowed her healing in and she never got sorted out properly. And so she now has an injury that holds her back a little bit. And she also doesn't really ever want to revisit that life, the life of being in the arena, because of what happened to her friend. However, she does have two twin younger brothers, and one of them has a lung condition, and he relies on very expensive medication to be able to survive. And it doesn't cure him, it just kind of like holds back his symptoms. And one day she's approached by this vampire who has bought up all of this expensive medication in the area so that she can't have any, because he is going to blackmail her into participating in this competition that the Emperor holds to select those elite guards. It's like the final round of this thing. There's 3 trials that you have to pass, and if you pass, then you can become a guard. It can be a fight to the death. It doesn't have to be, depending on the Emperor's mood. He might want you to fight to the death, he might not, but it's obviously a very risky situation anyway. And he tells her that he will give her the medication that he has, and he will look after her brothers while she's gone. And upon her completing these trials, he will send her brother to a healer that is actually going to cure him and take away this lung condition that he has forever. So she initially resists because she thinks that she's going to die in the process of this competition anyway, and it's not going to do anything. And so her brother won't get healed anyway, and her brothers need her to survive. So if she's dead, then they're gonna die anyway. But at some point, her back is really up against the wall when her brother desperately needs this medication, otherwise he's gonna die on the spot. So she reluctantly agrees, and she enters into this competition. The reason why this vampire wants her to compete is because he wants the Emperor assassinated. So her task is to complete the trials, to join the guard, to get close enough to the Emperor to be able to kill him. Now, as I said, there is a love triangle in this story. I've already picked a team, guys. I'm team Primus, however you pronounce that. He's essentially the head of the Emperor's elite guard. So you have like the guard that they're all like competing to be a part of, and then you have like his super elite warriors, and the Primus is the head of one of those, and he's the guy that Arvel is going to have to like slip around his radar to be able to kill the Emperor when she gets that far. Now, the other love triangle participant is the son of the Emperor, and I'm assuming at this point, because it is a love triangle, that he's going to be misunderstood. At the minute, like, we've seen him rip someone's heart out. He is cruel. He is given kind of like I don't know, I can't think of a love interest like him because I haven't enjoyed a book with a love interest like him before. I think when I read, what was that book called? It was a fairy loot romantasy book, and the reason why I didn't like it was because I felt like the guy was too cruel. I remember the name of the author. Nectar of the Wicked by Ella Fields. Like, he's given cruel fairy prince. I'm pretty sure he's a vampire, but that is kind of like the vibe that he's getting. He's got claws and he goes around like threatening people. I'm not on that guy's side. I am on the side of the Primus. As soon as Arvel arrives in this like training area, it's clear that he is a little bit weird. Well, he's not. He's weird around her, and we start to piece together that there's maybe a reason for that, but he's very much like, you need to leave. You're not good enough to be here. You're gonna die. You need to get out. And for the longest time, she's like confused as to why he's taken such an interest in her, but that does all become clear actually quite quickly in the book. So I've picked my team. Let's see whether I stay on this train, because the last time I remember being completely blindsided by something similar to a love triangle was ACOTAR, and that was like 11 years ago now, because I was like Tamlin till I die. I was ride or die, and I was like, there is nothing. I remember being enraged at the end of ACOTAR. I was like, there is nothing that is going to make me switch ships, but just like everybody else, switch ships I did. We'll see how it goes. I am enjoying it. I do think the world building is not as immersive as I would like. Like, it's not forming this rich tapestry of a world in my mind. I'm having to think to kind of put the pieces together, and I've discussed before how a really good fantasy world for me is one where the story like plays out like a movie in my mind, and if the atmosphere and the world building isn't quite there, then my brain has to work too hard to paint that picture seamlessly. I'm having to work a little hard to get into this, but in terms of like the storyline and the characters, I feel like I'm quite well established in this story now. So I am hoping to have a little bit of a cozy Sunday afternoon afternoon reading. I have my liquid IV, which I should have made this morning and I forgot about. I also have my protein bar, which I bought a box of these, like a variety box at Costco, which I love when you can get variety boxes of protein bars because they tend to sell them in packs of like 12 of the same flavor. It's like, cool, I don't even know if I like that one, but sure, I guess. So I got this so that I could try all of my protein ones, and honestly, don't rate them. They taste like nothing, like chewy bars of nothing. If you want a chocolate type protein bar, then I would recommend the Bear Bells ones, specifically the peanut caramel and also the caramel one, which tastes like a Snickers and a Mars bar, respectively. Those ones are good shit. These ones, not so much. They're the ones I've got, so I'll deal with it. I'll eat it. And I'm also going to be reading some more of We Who Will Die, which I'll be bringing you an update on very soon, I think, because I think about halfway through this now. But I have also been listening to a little bit of Operation Bounce House while I've been making lunch and stuff today. And Kami she's a bit too active. I think I need to go play fetch with her to burn off some energy because she is about to start chewing on a bone, which is probably going to be a little bit annoying. I'm so sorry. But I'm 150 pages into Operation Bounce House by Matt Dinman. And I am both enjoying this and not enjoying it so much. I really enjoy what it's saying. I don't care so much for the way that it's saying it. Like sometimes I'm into it and sometimes I'm not. But the plot of this one is essentially that our main character, Oliver, who reads like a teenager, I'm sure he's older than that, but he reads very much like a teenager to me, but I feel like it's also part of his lifestyle on this planet that makes him seem maybe a little bit younger. But himself and his friends and his family have to fight back against this invasion from Earth of war machines who are coming to exterminate them. There have been rumblings that this might be happening, and Oliver has not taken it seriously at all. And one day he wakes up, he's hungover, and he is confronted with this machine piloted by a child from Earth that is trying to kill him. So this has a lot to say about the political and societal climate that we are living in this exact moment. It's incredibly poignant for where we are in the world right now, and for that reason, I'm really enjoying it. So to give you some more context to the planet where Oliver lives, he is only, I think, the second generation to be born on planet. He's either the second or the third. I'm pretty sure his grandfather was actually born on a ship that traveled from Earth to the planet that they now live on to colonize it, and he built the farm that Oliver lives on, and the agriculture robots, I think, came from Earth. They were essentially sent to make way for other people potentially eventually coming to live there. Now, the generation before Oliver, so his parents' generation, the majority of those people died because they had a disease from birth, which has now been cured, but it did wipe out most of that generation. And Oliver's generation is the first healthy one to be born on this planet. Now, they have heard rumblings from Earth because these people are very slightly genetically modified. And by that, I mean they look like regular humans. They seem like regular humans when you speak to them. The way that they live, for all intents and purposes, they are regular humans, but they've been very slightly genetically modified. I think it's something to do with the nutrition that they need based on the planet where they now live. And because of that, people on Earth have been referring to them as subhuman. And it's been made to look justified, like because they're genetically modified, they're not human, they're not like us. But really what we see going on here is a form of othering, a form of distinguishing these people on the planet from regular humans, from us, like they're different from us, and that means that it's okay if we kill them. Now, another interesting aspect of this book is that the majority of the people piloting these war machines are children, and that is because this has been presented as a game to them. It is essentially like Fortnite, like Call of Duty. You have gaming streamers who are piloting these warships and hunting down people and killing them, and this speaks a lot to me of the way, I mean, this has been happening historically. It's happening right in this moment, but also historically over hundreds of years, potentially even thousands of years. But the dehumanization of other people to make the atrocities that are committed against them seem okay. And like I said, we're seeing this play out in so many different ways in today's society. It's actually insane the variety of atrocities against humanity that we get the pleasure of viewing every time we open TikTok. And I feel like this book also really speaks to that experience, to the way that in the age of the internet that we currently live in the age of content creation, not only the internet, we have access to information from all over the world. The majority of the information that we consume is user generated. It's not coming necessarily from reputable sources. Not to say that the people providing the content are reputable, but like we have so many sources of information presented to us at all times, and platforms like TikTok, like Instagram, they want us to keep consuming it, so they keep throwing it at us constantly. And the amount of human atrocities that you can see on a daily basis on your phone screen, like while you're having breakfast, while you're picking your kids, like waiting for your kids to come out of school, while you're at the gym, you know, just minding your own business, there has to be an element of your brain that compartmentalizes it and switches it off. And you know, that's not normal. I do it as well, because it's just the era that we live in, but it's not normal that we are presented with so much, not just information in general, it's very overwhelming, but also harrowing information that we have to somehow process and then move on with our normal lives. And so there is, I feel, an element of our brains that make it not real. Like, it's not as serious as it would be if it was happening right in front of us, because we're so used to it at this point that we're just completely desensitized to it. And I feel the way that we have streamers and kids and gamers being the people who are exterminating humans that have been classified as subhumans really speaks to this kind of era where I feel like we trivialize human life more than we ever have before. There are terrible things that are being revealed to us every single day, and nobody's being punished for it. And we kind of just have to accept that and move on. And honestly, like, I stop and look at the world pretty much every day at this point, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, how did we get to this? I'm like, has it always been this bad? When things like terrible things were happening 20 years ago, when people were going to war 20 years ago, was it this bad to the adults of that time? And I just didn't get it because I was a kid, or like prior to that I wasn't born. Has it always been this bad? Or is it like really, really bad right now? So I feel like this book is really hitting the nail on the head in delivering those messages, and also the way in which this book is delivered as almost humorous. I mean, it definitely is humorous. It's not quite Dungeon Crawler Carl levels of humorous, I don't think, because these people are literally fighting for their lives. We also have these mixed media elements, which are kind of tableaus of their life before this invasion, to, I guess, humanize them even more and show you that before they had to fight back against these war machines, like, these were actual people. But the way that this is a fun, action-packed sci-fi in a lot of regards, I feel like doubles down on that message of making suffering almost palatable, or the way that it is seeming more palatable with the way that we ingest it today, if that makes any sense. Now, the reasons why I'm not enjoying this, there is a lot of technical language in it regarding, like, I feel like they were just arming up, and there was lots of information kind of like how the weapons were assembled, and it's like, okay, this is going right over my head. So there's some elements of the story that I'm not particularly engaging with in that regard. I feel like I'm really connected to the societal message within this book, but when you flip it into being an entertaining sci-fi story with a narrative, some of those elements are not exactly holding my attention. You guys know I'm not the biggest fan of Dungeon Crawler Carl. I do actually enjoy it, but there's also things that I don't like about it. I feel like Matt Dinman writes books that are like for bros, and I'm not saying that women can't read them. I know so many women that are reading and loving the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, but he's writing for bros. Like, that is his target demographic, and I feel like it really shows sometimes. And I think it's that level of fun bro humor for Matt Dinman that doesn't really hit for me all of the time. But the reason why I keep reading Dungeon Crawler Carl, and the reason why I'm enjoying Operation Bounce House, is because of those messages, which sci-fi has always been incredibly political. Reading is political across all genres, but I feel like the sci-fi genre specifically always has some sort of criticism or observation on mainly society embedded within the text, which is what I really love about the genre. So that's pretty much what keeps me reading Matt Dinman books, even though the delivery is not always 100% for me. So I thought that I would sit and finish my book this evening, but I have been stuck on Final Fantasy X, the remake. I played it way back when I was a kid. It's my favorite game of all time, but I've been playing the remake for years and years and years, and I've been stuck on this part in the Omega Ruins for about at least a year and a half. So yesterday I broke into it, cracked it open. I was like, you know what, let's have a go. And I got past the part that I was stuck on. So I played it a little bit last night, once again, when I was supposed to be reading. And today I was like, you know what, this evening, I'm going to finish my book. I'm going to finish it. But then I got to the point of no return in the game and I had to do all the boss fights to the end. So I finished Final Fantasy X, and yes, I did cry. I didn't sob quite as hard as I did when I was a kid. That was really rough, but I did cry. So I'm sadly only on page 307 of this. I'm going to read a few chapters before bed. I was going to kind of like force myself to finish it because I only have like 110 pages left, and I hate going to sleep when you have like less than 50 pages left. You might as well just finish it. So I kind of didn't want to get to that point, but I don't think I'm going to make it that far tonight, unfortunately. I am really enjoying this one though. The only thing that it's not that I'm not loving it. This is kind of nitpicky. It's just if I think too hard about it, it doesn't make enough sense for my liking, because I like to know everything about everything all of the time. That's just who I am. And this is a world that is inspired by the Roman Empire, okay? We're following this girl and she is becoming one of the Emperor's guard, and it's like a gladiator arena style battle. They have 3 tests that they have to pass, all very Roman Empire. And then we have the vampires, and the law of this world is the way, but we also have other magical creatures aside from the vampires, and the creation of this empire, including suppressing the rest of the magical creatures, because apparently they weren't necessarily on board with vampires ruling. And so whenever one of them is found, they're killed. And in this book, we've seen a Kelpie or multiple Kelpies. We've seen a griffin, and I think that's it for things we specifically seen. But there is a word that encompasses like all magical creatures. You also have the sigil marked, which is what our main character is. And that is somebody who can wield a magical ability, like your sigil grows, and our main character's hasn't. So she thinks that there's something wrong with her. So you have the vampires, the sigil marked, other miscellaneous magical creatures, and mundanes who are humans. But my question is, why? Why do all of these things exist in the same place? And like I said, it's not necessarily a plot hole or bad world building. It's just I am the person who asked that question. I am the person who asked why, which is why I appreciate authors like Brandon Sanderson, because he's going to give me like 10 levels of why. All the way to the core of that earth, he's going to tell me why the vampires and the magical creatures and the Roman Empire are all here at the same time. Whereas this kind of just is. And that could be, to give Stacia Stark the benefit of the doubt, that could be because the main character has only really known the Empire. She only knows the world as it is, so she hasn't questioned how it was. Given the way that her magic is potentially coming into fruition in this, and the way that the first book in a series tends to be set up on like a springboard into a grander plot that's a little bit more expansive, maybe I'll find out why. Maybe this is tied to one of her other series, like set in the same world. I have no idea, but that is my only kind of, it's not even an issue I have with it. It's just occasionally I'll be reminded that the people or some of the creatures in this world are vampires, and it's like, but why? How did the vampire lore intersect with this Roman Empire structure to create this world where there's also other magical creatures? Like when you read something, for example, I've just read A Blood and Fire by Ryan Carhill, that just is a classic fantasy world. So when dwarves and elves pop up, it's like, okay, this makes perfect sense because the kind of world that this is familiar. When you have a world that's a little bit different, I do feel like I want to know that why. Something I did make a TikTok about actually is the love triangle in this, because I love me a love triangle. I love telling people they're wrong when they pick the wrong ship and getting really heated about it. Not like in a serious way, but just to like, I just don't understand where you're coming from. And I don't understand Rorik as a love interest. And I feel like we're going with the Rhysand angle on him, and it's going to be a whole like, oh, he's misunderstood, he's pretending to be a big bad guy for whatever reasons. But I'm just like Team Tiernan all the way. I don't know what Stacia Stark could do to make me change my mind at this point. And this is why I said like my feelings towards love triangles are kind of similar with polyamory. Like I always have a personal favorite, but I feel like the difference between them two things to me and the way that I feel about them is when it's like a why choose, I'm like, why are you wasting your time with this man that I don't care about? Whereas when it's a love triangle, I feel like I can get really heated and emotionally involved and be like, you can see right through him. This boy is like so transparent. Like you don't want him. Like go back to the other guy. The other guy's better. I'll leave this guy. Go to that guy. Whereas when I know for sure that everyone's like a done deal, as is the case in a why choose, I feel like I'm not as emotionally invested because I know that the outcome is that we're just not going to choose. Whereas in a love triangle, I want to know who we're going to choose. And I have opinions on who we should choose. I did ask for people's thoughts on the love triangle in the TikTok that I made, but obviously this is a pretty recent release. So if you guys have read this, let me know what you think, because there's only one right answer. But if you're wrong, that's fine. It's okay to be Delulu. So I finished We Who Will Die by Stacia Stark, and I wanted to let you guys know that I did a little bit of research into the magical mythical creatures within this story, because I was thinking after talking to you guys about wondering why they're all in this world, I was wondering if they were all from Roman mythology. They are not. Some of them are, but there's like centaurs in here and also gorgons, which I believe are more from Greek mythology. And then there's also things like harpies, which are both in Greek and Roman mythology, but that is not the reason. I was wondering if that was the reason why everything existed in this world, because it's all like ancient Roman stuff, but that is not the reason. I will say though, not knowing exactly why every creature exists in this world is not actually really an obstacle when you're reading it, unless you're anyone but me and you really want to know the hows and the whys of absolutely everything. So don't worry about that too much. I think that the world building was adequate. I gave this one a low 4-star rating. I would say that this is actually more of a plot-driven story than I originally anticipated or typically anticipate from a romantasy story. I did enjoy the relationships in here, and I actually really liked our main character of Arvel, but I think the focus of this one is definitely the plot of Arvel trying to kill the Emperor, as well as the relationships that she's kind of building with one of these two guys, and also against her will almost getting to know the other one a little bit better. But I would say the main focus is the assassination plot, as well as the kind of political machinations that are going on in the background of this world, the reason why the certain person that hires her wants the Emperor dead, and the like factions that have evolved around that particular thought, as well as some other stuff that's going on like with those mythical magical creatures and what that potentially means for the realm and the current governmental system that we have going on. Now, I do believe that this is going to evolve past the arena and the gladiator vibe that we have going on when we go into the second book in this series, which at this point I am hoping to read. I did really enjoy the story. I will say it is not a new favorite of mine. I was not at a level of investment where I would like rave about this series forever, but I did really enjoy my time with it. The way that I feel about this, it actually reminds me a lot of Blood and Steel by Helen Shora, which I read last year and then have just reread for my Patreon book club. And when I've been talking about that series, I've said like I enjoy a lot of the tropes in this book. I like the way that Helen Shora delivers them, but they're things that I have seen executed better in other series in the past. So if you like the tropes, it is potentially going to scratch the itch for you, but I don't think it is going to be a book that executes these things in a way that's going to blow your mind. But then if this book does sound interesting to you, then I would recommend it. I don't think it's going to be on my favorite books of the year list, but it is currently the best romantasy that I've read this year. I really do love a love triangle, and it was really nice to actually see a love triangle at the forefront of this one. And I do think that I was more invested in some of the romantic developments with that little bit of competition there from a third party. And I'm very interested to see how it plays out in the sequels, because I think we're going to have like this book centers more around one love interest, and I do think we're going to be tipping the scales a little bit in book 2 to get to know that other one a little bit better and potentially like try and change the readers' minds about him. We'll see though, because I'm stubborn and I'm loyal and I've already picked my side. I do also love a Roman Empire influence, and while Stacia Stark did not provide the most unique, exciting use of the Roman Empire that I've ever read in fantasy. I did really enjoy its inclusion and also the structure that we had of these like gladiatorial games. And I am going to be keeping one copy of this book. I'm actually going to drop Kami off in about 20 minutes. She's going for a couple of trial nights with the sitter that we're hoping that she's going to stay with when we go to South Korea. And I have to drive past my nail tech's house to do that. And when I had my appointment, I was telling her that I was currently enjoying this book. She said she's run out of things to read. So I might actually go and drop this copy off on my way back, and I will be keeping the Fairy Loot edition of this one. But as I predicted, enjoyable. Do not need 2 editions of this one, but thank you so much to Penguin Michael Joseph for sending this one my way to try it out. I have been wanting to read from Stasia Stark for quite some time, and I wasn't disappointed with this one. So I don't think I've read much more of Operation Bounce House since the last time that I spoke with you. I am planning on working on my Patreon bookmark to hopefully get it off for print today when I get back from dropping Kami off. And I'll probably listen to my audiobook while I work on that, so I should get through a little chunk of it then. But I do need to pick a physical read, so I've got my wheel up, and let's see what book 3 of this vlog is going to be. Ooh, it's not Starside because I think that's yellow. Swordcatcher. I do want to read this, don't get me wrong. I do enjoy Cassandra Clare, but I feel like getting into a series this chunky at this point when I have so much else going on, I feel like is not going to be great for me in general. This is also pretty thick. It's nearly 600 pages. It is 597 pages in the paperback copy at least. But you know what? This is my own fault because I should have read this before October 2023 and it is currently March 2026 and I haven't gotten around to that yet. So looks like it's going to be Swordcatcher. This one I think I've already mentioned. I did read in that one episode that I did where I was trying chapters of books and I had to unhaul 10 books. Honestly, that is I think maybe my best performing episode of Shelve It or Scrap It on my channel, but the one that I hated the most in terms of filming it. But I know a bunch of people wanting me to do a follow-up to that where all of the books that I shelved through the try chapter process I picked up and continue to read. Didn't do that, but I'm going to be continuing with Swordcatcher now. So I think I read the first 50 pages. I think that was what I tried to do during that video, but I am of course going to go back and reread them. While this is chunky, Cassandra Clare tends to be really compulsively readable, so I don't think I'll have any issues with it in that regard. I did obviously enjoy the first 50 pages I read, and this one is following, from what I remember, a prince and his swordcatcher who is essentially his bodyguard. He's somebody who looks incredibly like him, so he stands in as the prince's body double when they think there's going to be an assassination attempt. And there's also a third character in here who is a girl who I can't remember why, but she doesn't have access to magic, supplies and education in the way that other people of this realm do, and I think it is because of her people, like the place where she lives or her race or something like that. So I will of course let you guys know a little bit more when I've made my way through a chunk of this book, but book 3 is going to be Swordcatcher. So I am about 25% of the way through Swordcatcher. The chapters in this are actually really long, so I put my bookmark at the beginning of chapter 6, but I am somewhere in the middle. I got an ebook copy from Libby because you know how I am. I love to read on the old Kinney, but I am not enjoying this right now, which I'm very surprised about. At this point, I'm still going to give it some more time because it's very slow going, and I feel like that is not necessarily contributing to why I'm not enjoying it, but I'm not far enough into the story right now that I could even tell you what this is about. So I feel like I need to give it more of a chance, given that it is a book that is by an author that I have enjoyed before. And not only do I have book 1 in the Fairy Loot edition because it was part of that adult sub for, I'm assuming, 2023, I also have the sequel because I was confident that I would enjoy this one, being somebody who's enjoyed Cassandra Clare and somebody who really likes adult multi-perspective high fantasy. This one has quite a European influence as well. Well, a very European influence. I think they are set in a fantastical equivalent of Europe. And you can definitely draw parallels between some of the other nations in this world and ones that exist in real life. So it's definitely going for that European fantasy lean, and that is something that I do tend to enjoy, especially multi-perspective stories of that vein. We have things like The Demon King by Cinda Williams-Chimer, also The Smoke Thieves by Sally Green is something that I've read for one of these videos in the past, and all have those kind of vibes. I do think that the world building is a little bit clunky though, and that is where it's losing me. Cassandra Clare's books in the past for me have always been incredibly engaging, and I think the thing that I'm really struggling to reconcile with this is that I don't feel engaged by the writing. And I know obviously we have a very different setting, we have a very different pace, but I kind of expected it to retain the addictiveness of Cassandra Clare's writing, and for me it isn't right now. I do also think that I prefer our female main character in here more than I prefer the male characters, and that perspective right now is very much secondary to the perspective of Kel, who is the sword catcher, and I do think I find myself a little bit more interested when we are following Lynn as opposed to Kel. But our two central characters, I don't know what the plot of this is yet. I think it has something to do with the criminal underground of this city, because the second book is called The Ragpicker King, and in here the Ragpicker King is this mysterious vigilante figure. Think something, I guess, like Robin Hood. He's a notorious criminal, but he's one that a lot of people are quite endeared by. So I think that the core plot is going to center around him and that criminal underworld somewhat, but we are following mainly Kel, who is plucked from an orphanage when he's a kid and asked to be the sword catcher to the prince. Now the prince very much stipulates this is a tradition almost. When the prince gets to a certain age in this realm, or the crown prince, then they do pick a sword catcher until they ascend to king, and then the sword catcher is retired as just like a noble of the world. So Kel is picked from an orphanage and he's asked to stand in, and the prince Connor is adamant that Kel volunteers to be the sword catcher. So throughout the years, we start off with Kel in the orphanage, but we jump ahead to when they're a little bit older, and throughout the years these two boys have become quite close, and I would say they are akin to brothers. However, Kel is very aware that when he's stepping into the role of Connor at these public events where essentially there's risk of Connor being assassinated, he's putting his life on the line for him, but also he is playing the part of the prince without receiving a lot of the benefits of being a prince. And we see that kind of duality to him, where he feels a lot of loyalty towards the royal family for picking him out of obscurity and essentially saving him from a life as probably a petty criminal once he had aged out of this orphanage, and giving him a life of comfort and relative wealth. And he's definitely grateful for that opportunity, but he does also see the way that he is treated differently in comparison to the people that he's closest to, because he has been raised so closely to the prince. We also get to see a lot of Prince Connor from his perspective, which is providing interest in, and he is, as all princes are, struggling with the weight of the crown and having to take up that mantle and that responsibility, while also wanting more freedom and more agency to choose his own future. Our female character Lynn is essentially Jewish. Like I said, there's a lot of parallels between the races, the religions, and also the nations of this world and our own world. And I'm 100% confident that Lynn and Lynn's community are representing the Jewish community in this world, and they are the only people who have access to magic. Now, what I can't reconcile at this point in the book is why that is something that they are almost persecuted for, as opposed to being celebrated, because in between every chapter, we have these very small excerpts from various accounts or books in this world, essentially depicting a world of magic and how there used to be a lot more magic in the world, but now it is very restricted. So Lynn's people are the only people who have access to magic, but they are also forced to live a life of segregation. Lynn is a healer in her community and she wants to be able to advance that. She has a friend who is very unwell and she is constantly barred from accessing the literature and the resources that she would need to be able to learn more and better serve her community and maybe save her friend's life. And she's incredibly bitter because she is somebody who is incredibly intelligent. She has a lot of ambition. She's not somebody who shies away from work. Like, she wants to put in the work to perform this service for her community. And because of who she is not allowed access to any of these materials. They're reserved for the scholars of the world, and herself and her people are not allowed to attend the university that would give her access to those materials. We also see a lot of anger from her regarding this when it comes to the fact that her people are the only people who are able to wield magic, and back in the history of the world, they were able to do a lot more grand things with their magic. They could heal people instantly. They knew a lot more about their abilities, and that is also something that they have been restricted access to. And she also has a lot of resentment towards her grandfather, who is the only one of her people who is in any position of power, and he is one of the main advisors to the king, and he's essentially had to sacrifice his family to be able to step into that role, and he puts the royal family above her own, which Lynn is incredibly, understandably, I think, resentful of. So I'm going to give it another day or so, maybe another 100 or so pages, and see how I feel about it, because right now I'm just feeling very ambivalent. With it being adult high fantasy, I do think that giving it a little bit longer is the right thing to do, because sometimes it takes a little time for these things to warm up. But right now, my initial thoughts is that I'm not really having a great time with it. So I am 200 and hey baby, 279 pages into Swordcatcher. I am sad to say, though, that I'm not going to make it any further into Swordcatcher. I do think I'm calling it and I'm DNFing it here, and it took me a really long time to make this decision, because it's one of those books where I've just always assumed that I'm going to like it. So to get into it and figure out that actually, no, I'm not enjoying myself, it's taken me some time to come to terms with that. But also, sporadically throughout this book, it does draw me in. Like, I'll have a chapter where I'm invested, and I'm not like super invested, but where it kind of pulls my attention in again, and then very shortly after, I am just unfortunately going back to being quite bored. There are some things that I do enjoy about this book. I think I like the world building has been very clunky, but I think that the world itself I like, and I like the kind of depth that we have to it that is being built throughout this. I do prefer the female main character of Lynn. I've just been finding her perspective more interesting than I have Kel's perspective. But surprisingly, I think it's the writing style that I don't enjoy. And I think as well, I'm going to have to reassess my Cassandra Clare collection at this point, because I loved The Mortal Instruments in 2021, that's not true. I read The Mortal Instruments when I was 21. So over 10 years ago now, and I loved it. It was my favorite series up until I read ACOTAR, it was actually only a year before I read ACOTAR. I did read The Mortal Instruments the year that City of Heavenly Fire was released, though. So that's kind of when I caught up with the series, and I was waiting for that final book. And I loved it. It took me on a roller coaster ride. I was so invested. I didn't love the infernal devices. I do really like the characters, though, because I know that's blasphemy to a lot of people. I loved Will. I loved Jem. I didn't actually like Tessa so much, if I'm being honest, but I loved the love triangle and the way that all played out. And then I, of course, picked up, because I had enjoyed The Mortal Instruments, I picked up the Dark Artifices as they were released, and I have like the big Waterstones exclusive paperbacks. I read the first book in that series a few years ago, and I enjoyed it. At this point, I still haven't continued on, and I don't think I want to read any of the historical installments in the Shadowhunters world, and now I just don't think I care enough about the Dark Artifices to return to that either. And having picked this up and been really struggling to engage with the writing in this one, I actually do now think I'm at a point where I have outgrown Cassandra Clare's writing. It doesn't really do all that much for me anymore. I was struggling to see why I wasn't enjoying this, because slow-paced fantasy is not a problem for me. Big, expansive, but also info-dumpy world building towards the beginning of a book typically does not bother me. Thick books that are a slow burn, never really been an issue. And it clicked for me, I think, somewhere in the last 50 pages that I've just read on sprints with my patrons, that this felt like the Infernal Devices, in that it felt like I was reading something historical. Now, with medieval-esque, medieval-inspired fantasy like this, especially like Eurocentric fantasy, it's obviously based on history, so it makes sense why it would have a historical lean to the writing, but something in this felt very akin to the Infernal Devices for me. And I will say that aside from the time period, the thing that I didn't like about the Infernal Devices is that it has this plot that centers around, what's the word, like clockwork, because they're called like Clockwork Princess, clockwork machinery, and they're like the bad guys of the plot, and that just really didn't do anything for me at all. So it wasn't necessarily the writing, but I feel like when Cassandra Clare writes in a setting that is not contemporary, I don't really enjoy it. It was the writing in this for me. Because like I said, the world, even though the world building wasn't delivered in the most seamless way, the world in itself I did find quite interesting. And the more I got into this, the more I could kind of see little pieces of the world that were going to become relevant to the plot. And I think those were the parts where it was pulling me back in. But overall, I just don't want to read it. I just don't. And whenever I put it down, I don't really want to pick it back up. And I think at this point, I should just call it quits. I kept thinking like, oh, but what if like the end is really good? Like, what if I continue and it continues to pull me in more and more? But then actually, I feel like there's a bigger chance that I'm going to get to the end of this and be like, wow, really wish I hadn't read this 600-page book. And at this point, we're still over 300 pages to go. I'm done. And I'm so sad about it because obviously I was so convinced that I would enjoy this book. So I pre-ordered the Fairy Loot edition of the sequel, having not read book one. That is how convinced I was of my enjoyment, because unless I have like a few different reasons to do that, I don't really do that anymore. If I haven't read book one, I'm probably not going to pre-order book two because there's more of a likelihood that I'm not going to love it than I am, you know. But here we are. So I will be scrapping Swordcatcher, the ARC copy, but I'm also going to be scrapping those Fairy Loot editions. So I am going to take 2 books upstairs to fill that gap. They are quite thick books, so they are going to leave actually a very large gap, but I do want to leave space for Operation Bounce House, which is close alphabetically, because even if after finishing the book, which I'm just about halfway through at this point, so you're due an update soon, but even if I finish it and I decide I don't want it, I'm still going to be keeping hold of the hardback copy for long enough to make that video that I was talking about the broken binding sub. So I'm going to want to shelve that so it's not just hanging around unnecessarily. So I'll try to leave space for that. I also actually filmed my reaction to last year's self-destructing books, which if you guys don't know what self-destructing books are, they are a stack of 10 books that I choose every year. And we've done a couple of episodes of Shelve It or Scrap It, like specifically reading those books, but I set them aside, and if 12 months has passed and I haven't read them, then I have to unhaul them. So I filmed my reaction to last year's stack recently, which means that I've taken a couple of books off the shelves upstairs and unhauled them. So we also have, I think, a gap for 2 more books as well. So I'm going to take 4 books upstairs and I'm going to fill kind of all of the gaps we've got, try and leave some room for Operation Bounce House, but we're going to reduce the stacks for quite a bit. I'm also not going to be choosing another book now, because with the shelving of some of these books, we're going to be more than like 4 books down on this episode, which means all I need to do now is finish Operation Bounce House, which I'm hoping to do shortly. So the books that we're taking upstairs, if we're talking like alphabetically close, I could take the Thorn Season, if I can get it out, by Kira Azar. I actually don't have that much. Oh, I do have that one. That would be a good pick, actually. Although Illumicrate have just put the sequel to this on pre-sale, so I could do with reading it sometime soon. That's not going to be today though, so I might as well shelve it. And the book I am talking about is A Song of Legends Lost by M.H. Ayinde. Based on what I'm going to be unhauling, I also need another book in a similar place along the alphabet, and then I also need something that is around the letter M. I-J-K-M. Not close enough. So for the one that is close in the alphabet, I'm gonna go for, oh, these are perfect. For the one that's close in the alphabet, I'm gonna go for The Last Hour Between Worlds by Melissa Caruso. And then for one that's close to M, Immortal Consequences by Ivy Marie. So now we'll go see if we can fit these all on my shelves. So as you can see, we are already looking quite gappy in here. So I've got a gap here, one there, although I think that's just because this book is so thick that when that book is in, like, you can't fit another book there. And then there's also one that you can't quite see down here. So I'm so sad. I'm gonna be taking out Swordcatcher and the Ragpicker King. It upsets me more when books don't meet my expectations, because I love the edges on these as well, because the expectations still remain, and it's like my expectation of loving the book and then not is what I'm sad about, not the fact that I actually didn't enjoy the book, if that makes sense. But as you can see, we have a lot of space now. So up top we have, I'm gonna have to move these down. Oh, I don't think I am actually. I think I'm just gonna have to move them along. So NHIND goes in first. That's gonna move down anyway. And then in this gap, I can perfectly fit here Azar, and then that should be significant. We still have to get this one in, which is The Last Hour Between Worlds, which means Roshani Chokchi's coming down, and that one will go, yep, there. And then that should actually be sufficient space for Operation Bounce House, because I don't think it's going to be all that thick. So we'll leave that, and then our last gap, which is this one, is where we're looking to slot Immortal Consequences. I've heard really good things about this author, actually. This is the other edition, the Fairy edition of Dawn of the Firebird as well, by the way, which I was hoping to read in this one, because I don't think I'm going to be keeping a standard edition of that. It's not quite going to go right on top, because I'm going to move that. Ah, she's a bit too thick. Oh no, what to do? Because I could. This is going to close the gap that I need for Matt Dinman. That fits because it's such a tiny book. And I'll slide that one in there. There is still a gap here, but if something like Kiki's Delivery Service or The Lifestyle, which are quite small books, or Vladimir actually need to go back into the stacks, then that's fine. So I have been listening to my audiobook. I'm about 280 pages into this now. I'm up to chapter 34, and I don't feel like a lot has changed since I last updated you. I'm still enjoying the social commentary that we're getting in this book, but the delivery of the story is not really my favorite. I am really sorry if you can hear her chewing on a bone. Literally up until the second I decided to start filming, she was doing that on the floor instead of right next to me. But this is obviously quite a war heavy story. It is the people of this planet literally arming up and fighting back against this invading force of streamers piloting war machines, and they're using the kind of repurposing the agriculture robots to help them out. And there's also a leader of the agriculture robots who's called Roger, who has also provided services like as a nanny for the family throughout the years. It actually reminds me a lot of, what's he called? The guy from Fallout, the robot from Fallout is how I picture Roger to be. Is it Fallout New Vegas? Mr. Handy? Codsworth. That's the guy. That is Roger to me. So he is kind of leading them in terms of the technology that they're using. There are elements of the warfare that I am enjoying. They're doing things like infiltrating the internet and like Earth databases to be able to dig up information on the people that they're fighting against. I like the way that they're utilizing that. But in terms of the way they're like firing missiles at each other and that kind of thing, it's not really my kind of story. And obviously I don't think that this book is doing anything different to what it said that it was going to do in the synopsis. And, you know, having read from Matt Dinman before, like I should have really known that it was going to focus mainly on on the action of this story. But I guess in spite of that, I expected it to have something a little bit special, because Dungeon Crawler Carl, right? We know I'm not the biggest fan, but I do agree that there is something a little special in the way that Matt Dinman tells that story, specifically through Carl and Donut, that has made so many people love it, even though I'm not like completely obsessed. This, I don't feel like has anything on the level of Princess Donut to really carry the story. So for all intents and purposes, it is kind of like exactly what it says on the tin. There is something in here, because, you know, every time I read a Dungeon Crawler Carl book, I'm like, it was absolutely fine until we had this one weird moment. So the main character's sister in here has an OnlyFans account. That is what she does. And it's called, I think it's called Real Friends, because in this world, a little bit of backstory, they essentially made it illegal to use AI that looked like humans, which, can we have that rule in the real world, please? But obviously, like, they had AI for things like OnlyFans, and then when they made that illegal, it obviously created a space in the internet for real people to fill. So the main character's sister Lulu is essentially an OnlyFans girl, and no shade, you do you, honey. If you can make money like that, if you can make bank, like that and you're comfortable doing that, then 100% I support you. But something that I do find a little bit odd in here is how much her brother supports her. I feel like it's okay to be supportive of sex workers and people who work in that space and still think it's really weird and not want to talk about it if it's your sister or a family member who is the person who is doing that. Like, I think that that's an okay line to draw. But the main character is really Thank you. That's the second time today you've thrown my Kindle on the floor. Thank you very much. But the main character is weirdly knowledgeable about exactly what his sister gets up to online. Like, his level of interest is just a little bit too much for me, considering it's talking about his sister. Like, he knows the names of her online personas and the characters that she plays. When they're starting to organize this resistance movement, they are going into her bedroom and she's like looking at him like, can you cover up my sex toys that are all on display? And I'm like, that's just a familial line that just feels weird to me to cross. But I do think that the narrative is still enjoyable. I do think it is missing that Dungeon Crawler Carl spark though, and I honestly, you know what, I think that it's Princess Donut. I think that she is what really sells the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, if I'm being honest, and alas, we have no donut in this one. But I'm happy to kind of like see this one out. I'm enjoying the audiobook. Don't think this one's going to be a massive win for me though, although I am enjoying like the underlying social commentary that is forming like the backbone of this book. So I just finished Operation Bounce House and I really liked the end of this. There were points that were introduced at the beginning of this book that I actually didn't expect to be circled back around to in the manner that they were. So that was quite surprising, and we actually had quite a few unexpected reveals that I thought were a really nice addition to this story. I do still feel the same way I have throughout the entirety of this book though. I thought that the ending did bring it to a very nice landing. I was very satisfied with the end. I very much enjoyed the social commentary throughout the entire book, but everything in the middle, like the execution, where this book is a entertaining book with a plot, is where I don't enjoy it, if that makes any sense. I can't remember what book I've read in the past that I've also felt this way about, where there are things or like themes and messages that I really enjoy, but when we kind of strip away the important messaging and it comes to the fact that like this is something to be consumed for entertainment, that is where it falls flat for me. It's very war dominated, it is very action heavy, it is kind of technical in the details of the war machines, and I mean in terms of the fantasy and sci-fi that I like to consume, even within an action-based manner, war robots are not really going to be at the top of my list. In comparison to Dungeon Crawler Carl, I do think that this lacks just a little something special. I do still think that this is comparable to the Illuminae files in a lot of ways with the plot and that central messaging, and I also think that this is not as humorous as the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, which I guess you could say is a little bit of a win for me personally, because it's the humor in Dungeon Crawler Carl that I often find is a little bit of a miss, but I do also think that it lacks a little bit of sparkle that in DCC does come in the form of our queen and savior Princess Donut. In terms of Shelve It or Scrap It and what we're going to do with this, and also the hardback edition, which I still haven't filmed my unboxing, so that is still in the box. I know for sure that this is not a book that I need a hardback copy of, so I'm going to keep hold of that for the purpose of the broken binding video that I hope to eventually make that we were talking about, just because it's just easier if I have the books as like a visual representative. I was thinking about keeping this because this is the kind of book that I would rather have in paperback anyway, if I'm being honest. I don't really know what I'm going to do with this at this point, but looking at my paperback shelves, I actually think I could just slot it right on there. So I might keep hold of it for a little while, but honestly, this was a 3-star read for me, and I actually don't feel like it's necessary for me to keep it. So I think I should probably just put it in the scrap pile. I will obviously keep hold of it long enough to film my wrap up and everything, and I guess I'll see how I feel about it at that point. I do think I'm feeling a little bit of attachment to it because I literally just finished it, but I also think that by the time I get to filming that wrap up, I'll be happy to let this one go. So that does conclude this episode of Shelve It or Scrap It, I actually think the format of dividing the amount of books in the stacks by the amount of months that we have and having that as the number, like the minimum number that has to be removed from the stacks, is a great idea going forward. In terms of filming this episode, it has felt so much more manageable for me, and I also can't believe that we are already bringing this episode to an end. So to wrap us up, we now have 35 books in the stacks. I'm going to do my best to avoid that changing before we get to the next episode. I do think we might add one or two because of the fact that I didn't actually manage to leave too much space for the hardback of Operation Bounce House upstairs, and I do want to keep that on a shelf instead of shoving it in a corner until I need it to reference for a video. So maybe we'll be on 36 or 37, but it won't jump much more than that. So I'm actually really happy with the progress that we made in episode 23, I think we're currently on. I did read or attempt to read 3 books during this episode. I did go ahead and pass along the standard edition to my nail tech when I said that I would, so I'm just using this as a stand-in for that copy. This is still going to remain on my shelves. I will be keeping hold of it. So this one I really enjoyed. Not the best book or best romantasy I've ever read, but I enjoyed it enough to keep a copy on my shelves. I'm also looking forward to the sequel, and it was quite refreshing to have a love triangle in the year of 2026. I know I was saying that like, oh, I'm over vampires. Like I'm still not over the oversaturation of vampires from the early 2000s and the 2010s. Well, 2010s was more dystopian, I feel, but love triangles, apparently I am ready for those to cycle back around. So give me more love triangles, please. Operation Bounce House, I am glad that I read it. Matt Dinman, definitely not an auto by author for me. Love the social commentary. Execution of the plot was just not really my thing. I do think if you are like a hardcore sci-fi, like action-based sci-fi or dungeon crawler car fan, you will enjoy this one a little bit more than me. I feel like you'll really vibe with the entertaining factor a lot more than I did. And then most disappointingly, Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. She was a flop. I'm still kind of mad that I've DNF'd this because, I'm not mad that I'm DNF'd it, I'm mad that I had to DNF it because I wasn't enjoying it. So not only are we scrapping, we don't have any shelves from what I've read in this episode because the only book we're keeping hold of a copy of is We Who Will Die, and that was already on the shelves. So I'm scrapping the 3 books that I read. Remember, that one is a stand-in for the other edition. And I'm also going to be scrapping the gorgeous Fairy Loot editions of Swordcatcher and the Rag Picker King. I honestly am shocked that I did not enjoy this one. We did manage to get a few shelves though. I've also just realized that holding the microphone is a choice, and I don't have to do that. I'm struggling for no reason. So we have 5 books scrapped for this episode. And even though none of the books that I actually read were shelved, we did manage to shelve 4 books from the stacks to fill the gaps on the bookcase upstairs. So with all of that taken into account, we are leaving this episode with 35 books in the stacks. Can you believe how little we have? This is now half of the books that we started this with, which was granted 2.25 years ago. Still taking it as a win though. I've told you this is the final boss and I'm making good progress on defeating it. So that does wrap up this episode. The next vlog that you're going to see on my channel, I think, is going to be a regular weekly reading vlog. Do please tune into those if they are at all interesting to you, because they're my favorite content to make. Like all vlogs, favorite content to make, and I've been putting more effort this year into bringing the weekly reading vlog back more frequently than I have for a few years on my channel because I've been distracted by things like Shelve It or Scrap It. So do stay tuned if you are at all interested in that. I think I definitely have to read The Shadow of the Gods for Catch Up Book Club, and I'll be picking something else off my TBR as well. But aside from that, guys, I do hope you've enjoyed this vlog if you've made it this far. If you have, please don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe if you want to. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you will go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.